I was just recording something on my phone, and then the bloody thing told me that it's ran out of storage space. So I'm going to pick up here and probably cover some of the points that we talked about before, but we'll just see how it flows. So the key idea that I wanted to pass is, what is the real value of bushcraft? Um, And it's very easy for this to seem like the value is in becoming highly skilled at identifying plants, um, tying knots, and deploying an array of kind of complicated techniques and skills and kit in order to become more self-reliant. Now, on the one hand, those are all really worthwhile goals and useful stepping stones on the kind of path of bushcraft. However, as I see it, the primary purpose of all this is just being at one with yourself out in the woods. And that sounds horrendous and esoteric, but I don't think it is. I think it's very serious, and there's a condition um, of modern life that we're all subject to. Almost all of us are subject to. So if you spend a lot of time sat at a desk in front of a computer, like most of us do, that kind of begins to mold you and dig into you, and there's a kind of simmering problem in our very technocratic kind of forward-facing culture, which is that while it's true that all these technological developments have given us a very high quality of comfort in life, by the same token, that comfort and the so-called efficiency gains of achieving that comfort have also come at a cost. And Nassim Taleb is one of the few thinkers that has really drilled into this with this lens of first order versus second order outcomes and effects. And in this area, I think, yeah, it's true that the first order gains in efficiency from things like email, mobiles, video, all of this stuff are massive, and they can't be denied with the kind of reactive Ludditism. Just the same, however, we need to also sort of take heed of what the second order effects are, and these are always harder to untangle because they're not immediately apparent by definition. And what will happen is some kind of tech evangelist, whether it's Internet of Things, what's the other one? Digital twin, AI, machine learning, and all that other stuff. What will happen is some evangelist of that technology will come along and reel off all of the first order benefits and how wonderful this is going to be for everybody and how this is going to raise health and human connection and just generally be, the greatest thing in town until the next stepwise increase in technology. But they always seem to fail to neglect what the second order effects are. Now, take the Internet of Things, which I think a lot of that has come out of my university, UCL, where a lot of research has been done in that area. And I haven't seen a single person or futurist give an honest appraisal of the systemic and entrenched problems with that technology. So, for example, if you have a fridge or a kettle, great, maybe you want that kettle or that fridge to be able to order you food and drink and be connected to some kind of internet database and so on. And maybe for the 1% of people that are obsessed with tech, maybe for these nerds, that's a great thing. But actually, for the rest of us, it's better that your kettle is not reliant on the internet. It isn't connected to a system that's quite fragile and vulnerable and requires software updates and all the rest of it, and all the other draining, kind of spiritually tiresome, non-human contact that comes with things as soon as they're computerized. Setting your boiler thermostat manually. At the moment, we have this funny midway analog of kind of an analog system mixed up, so a thermostat dial, which is physically analog, where you can depress the slots that you want your heating to come on manually. And then there's an LCD screen, and that just about works. But the next thing will be a so-called sort of smart meter system where it's all app-based and integrated into an Internet of Things architecture. And I don't think that's going to be more usable. I think a lot of people will struggle with it, and a lot of people will just find it another layer in their life of computerized drudgery. And the upshot of all of this is, who wants to look at more plastic or glass screens and have to process more and more information? Who has spare bandwidth for all of this stuff? So that's the broader view that I'm kind of taking on where we are, and why it's never been more important to just try and step outside of that for a small moment in the day or the week and just contemplate and reflect on what is it that we're doing, and are these digital things that we're integrating with, are they tools, or are we now serving the tools in a manner that's become slightly totalitarian and slightly oppressive? Like most people, I spend the bulk of my waking hours at work doing a job which involves the analysis and manipulation of information, whether it's writing or design work or just abstract thinking generally. All of that work, it just exists in this digital ephemera. It's quite rare to see a tactile, concrete outcome of all of this thinking. And I can only speak for myself, but at a very personal level, for a very long time, I have felt a kind of oppressive ramping up of the tension of information. And what I'm trying to articulate by that is that we are not made to sit at a desk and think. We are made to see and feel the outcome of our thinking in a way that has some kind of tactile quality. And this is a very tricky idea to unpack in a satisfactory manner. And there's a handful of people that have contributed to it. So Palasma is, I think, a Finnish architect and maker of sorts. And he's written a book called The Thinking Hand, which is all about the embodied cognition of doing things by hand. And this is one of the reasons why, as pretentious as it sounds, I try and do all of my, or as much work as I can, by hand and with a fountain pen. And really, I'm failing at this, if I'm honest, because it's a tiny slice of the actual work that I do. But there is some joy to this. So, say compared to typing or even using a biro, a fountain pen has this three-dimensional quality of depth and that kind of scratchiness. You're almost marking the paper with clear strokes, almost like a kind of reverse of etching. And you can see this actually when you watch people whose languages use symbols, so Korean, Japanese, or Mandarin or Cantonese languages. With all these symbols, if you watch a Japanese person write kanji, there's this very particular kind of etching-like process of constructing the glyphs that make up the symbols of kanji and katakana, and this is something that is kind of being eroded. So again, it's very pretentious, but I've tried to kind of cultivate a sense of tactileness with this lovely leather pen case, and it does bring me a lot of kind of just kind of low level enjoyment throughout the working week. Something which is quite controversial to say, but it really shouldn't be, because men and women are different, and why anyone feels kind of ashamed to say that is a bit of a sad reflection on our society. But this is, my gut feeling is that this is much more of a problem for men, because we are not here to just sit and think. Now, I am not someone who wants to denigrate thinking. I spend a lot of time thinking about topics, and thinking is a real privilege. It's something to really enjoy. But we're not made to just sit here thinking about abstract stuff and never getting out and doing anything in the real world. And there is a real world. There's a tactile and concrete, non-digital, non-connected real world where we can find a proper sense of our place in the landscape and our kind of identity outside of abstract thinking. And the simplest way to put that is that all of us have a kind of innate yearning towards our landscapes. So if you're an Englishman abroad, you will often feel when you come home this slight sensation of kind of relief, not just of being back on home territory, but also being surrounded by your landscape. And it doesn't have to be a cliche platitude about green and rolling hills, but there is something to that. And I'm sure many other people from many other places would feel the same thing. And it also extends to a sense of regional identity, as well as a national one. So this isn't something that has to be corrupted by any kind of politics. It kind of goes deeper than that, and all of that is rooted, if you excuse the pun, in a kind of ancestral sense of needing to be kind of working in some kind of alignment with natural ecosystems. What this isn't is going out and dressing up in tie-dye and doing some kind of shallow hippie imitation of eco sensitivity, I suppose. But it's just getting out there, just being in a place where you're not looking at a screen and you're just there. You're not there to kind of achieve something necessarily. You're just there to feel variation of the natural world. One thing I really like is this idea of temperature variation. So another second order effect of the modern world is that whilst we've become very comfortable and we've gained a remarkable protection from the elements, as time passes, we've also become less and less exposed to variability. And again, that's not an original idea. Which ones are? That's something that Taleb has talked about also in a lot of detail, and I'd expect a lot of the paleo guys in the fitness world are all over this. But this idea of thermal variation. So I really like the idea of actually intentionally kind of exposing yourself to a little bit of hardship. And I know I'm not alone in that. That's a kind of essential quality of being in the great outdoors. And again, it's coded into our language. So the great outdoors, there's a reason why it's called the great outdoors. It's because it's fantastically nourishing to us as human beings. I think in Sweden, their kind of colloquial phrase is the nature, not just nature or the outdoors, but the nature. And that's just a wonderful phrase. Um, yeah, and I know that sort of many other countries will have also these kinds of other intangible hints at the value of being outdoors. And we can break it down into things like a kind of scientism of thermal variation and, the effect of the sun scientifically on your skin cells and all of the rest of it, and come up with a kind of scientific view of everything. But that's missing the point. It's the totality of how that all helps you retain kind of dignity as a human being, dropped into the just madness of the modern world. And we don't have to turn ourselves into some sort of one-dimensional survivalist ideologue to go and do this. We can just start in a very small way and begin to just regain a sense of not being in the modern zoo. And it's as simple as just going outside with a day bag to a quiet spot, whether that's woodlands or a beach, somewhere on the coast, or even if you live in a big city like London, going out to Richmond Park or Hampstead Heath or any of these places. Maybe go at, well, be careful on Hampstead Heath, but maybe go at an unusual time, slightly unorthodox time, and just try and just experience it. So we've covered a lot of topics. I hope that sparks some ideas and given people some encouragement that all is not lost in this strange modern world that we find ourselves in. I know that this, for me personally, is a very serious ongoing conundrum to relieve the tensions of the modern world. So hopefully as time goes on, I'll gain some more insight in how best to do that.